Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty P.
Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview.
The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. Good morning. It is Thursday, March 28th, and if you were like me last night, you were watching the NTSB press conference that talked about the investigation that is going on with the cargo ship that slammed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge. It's that video footage is just horrifying, and I still have a lot of questions, and all of the reporters definitely did, but I know that generally we're not all fans of the feds, and that's okay. But I was actually very impressed with the NTSB chair, Jennifer Namade, I think was her last name, who led the press conference. I was very, very impressed with her knowledge, and also pushing back on the media and the inquiries, just saying, we're not going to speculate here. We're at the very beginning of the investigation. It's our obligation to follow the facts where they lead, not jump to conclusions. And she almost seemed to be kicking them down a little bit in a good way of saying, this isn't just something that you can look at a video that somebody posted on Twitter and know everything about the entire investigation. So I thought that was very well done, and we are still praying, of course, for all of the families who've been affected by that tragedy, and how this is going to now affect that particular port and the economy overall. And some of the information that she gave was very interesting to me that I wouldn't have considered otherwise. Like, for example, that there was some hazardous material on board, and some of the containers apparently were breached, and they're dealing with that, and then how they have to continue to reconstruct basically the entire scene, and some of those things, and get some permissions to move around and make sure that all of the cargo can get off of that ship, and also that port doesn't just kind of sit there and not have any sort of use in terms of the economic impact. So a lot of questions still, and the recovery, which is, it's not really a search and rescue at this point, unfortunately, will continue to follow. But I wanted to circle back, do a Saki circle back this morning, and cover a story that we didn't get to yesterday that I promised we would this morning, which is Ronna McDaniel leaving or being fired. She didn't leave willingly, but getting fired from NBC News as a contributor. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, especially when you contrast this to the Daily Wire firing Candace Owens, which we talked about, right? And these are in my view, two completely different situations, because we talked about the Daily Wire actually standing for something, being an online journal, but with perspective. That it's not just a recitation of the news, it's analysis, and it's from a particular perspective, just like we do here at AFR. And if I suddenly decided that I was going to convert to Islam, for example, probably my contract here would end, and that would be a good thing, right? We expect it, and you as listeners expect that even if there's a diversity of opinion on policy issues or in-house debates or some of those other things, that all of the hosts here are coming from a Christian biblical worldview perspective. That's analysis, and that is being a mission-driven organization that stands for something. Contrast that with NBC News or even Fox News or legacy media that themselves promote themselves as fair and balanced. And that's a tagline, of course, that Fox uses prolifically. But NBC News, as an organization, yes, they have analysts that come on to give perspective, but the whole point is that they call themselves journalists. And the term journalism itself, and I majored in journalism. My undergrad degree is actually in news and editorial journalism. So I studied this in college, and before going to law school, and then that actually helped me in my now ministry of not only describing current events and government and all of this from a biblical worldview perspective, but also it enabled me to more easily make the transition from more full-time practice of law into media and into legal analysis. And so I'm not a reporter. I'm not a journalist in the classic sense, because I give you my opinion. You know what I think, and I have a particular perspective. But people like Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid and Chuck Todd and these talking heads on NBC News were actually saying in the wake of Ronna McDaniel being fired, because in their words, she lacked credibility. That was the general overall concern as it was it came to light on social media. And that's, the NBC executives who fired her said, there were these concerns among these people. They called themselves journalists. I'm sorry, but Rachel Maddow is not a journalist. She is an activist coming from a perspective that is fully leftist in her worldview. And everybody has a worldview. It's not just the Christian worldview. Everybody has a lens with which they view the world. And reporters, the whole hallmark of journalism is that reporters are supposed to try to look at the facts and to put them out there as non-biased as possible and simply report. So, going back to this bridge disaster, to just simply report the facts, not shade it and color it, unless it is specifically an opinion piece. That's in the world of journalism, and you all know this. There's a difference between reporting facts versus having an opinion on those facts, and where we've gotten really blurred in the entire to spout her nonsense, and somebody's paying for it and somebody has it. Fine, that's what freedom of the press actually is. We can all have opinions. That's fine, but don't go telling the world that you are a credible news organization and you are unwilling to have actual journalists and then a fair and balanced opinion of a diversity of viewpoint of Democrats and Republicans, of Trump supporters and not Trump supporters. When I worked for President Trump's campaign, NBC News would never have me. They would never have. I was on CNN sometimes. I loved going on the leftist platforms, right? Because then I could actually talk back to them and tell them my opinion and where they were wrong and represent, my client's interests, which, the Trump campaign at the time and the president. And they never wanted me or anybody else in the, communications arena from the Trump campaign, because it was against their position. And hiring contributors, you have to realize how this works as well, because I've been a contributor on Newsmax. I've been a contributor on other networks in terms of a regular guest, Fox News. All of these other ones, right? And the way that contributors work is that you bring your perspective and your expertise if you have one. And so on Newsmax, I was hired to be a legal and faith contributor. So I would specifically on especially Sunday morning segments that we used to do all the time, I would give the Christian biblical worldview perspective. And that was the purpose of having contributors. And they have other people that are on there that disagree. And so, and that's okay. And I remember back in after the 2016 election, Donna Brazil, who was the former, I think she was the DNC chair, but she had that whole controversy over handing Hillary the answers to debate questions or for forecasting, foreshadowing what the questions would be, all of that. She was hired at Fox News, and a lot of the Fox News hosts were really upset because of the controversy, not necessarily because she was a Democrat, because they have other Democrats. But the Fox exec said she can stay. I mean, if you don't like her opinion, then get somebody else on, to push back. And that is a better way to operate if you want to be taken seriously as a news organization. So all of you know, I have no great affinity at all for Ronna McDaniel. I'm very glad that she is not the RNC chair anymore. I think she did a horrible job. No substantial wins. She was put in place just basically to do Trump's bidding at the RNC, and I don't think that that's necessarily what the RNC is for. But when she goes over to a network like NBC that actually invited her to be a contributor, and whatever her opinion is, she can talk about it, to then turn around and say, you're making our hosts and our alleged journalists uncomfortable, so we're going to fire you off the airwaves, that's ridiculous. And that is a completely different scenario than what happened at Daily Wire. But here's the thing. NBC now is saying they are a platform like Daily Wire, where they stand for something, and that Ronna doesn't fit in, so they don't want to pay her. And they only want to have voices on their network that will cater to the worldview and the perspective that they assent to. And so be very careful. If you ever watch NBC, and, I watch clips, I don't subscribe to cable, but, if you do, totally your choice, that's okay. If you watch NBC, pay close attention to the alleged Republicans and alleged conservatives that they have on. I would almost guarantee you that the only people they have on still are the never Trumper sort of conservatives, the ones who, under the guise of being fair and balanced, they're saying, well, look, we have the Republican on, but it's somebody who is still coming from a perspective that they want. Same thing as The View, right? There's the token Republican, Alyssa Farah Griffin, but, she's the never Trumper. She's not pushing back against what any of, Joy, what's her name, or Whoopi Goldberg, or any of them are saying, because she is there to play a part. So NBC should no longer call itself a news organization based on what they did to Ronna McDaniel. So we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Director of the AFA Foundation, Riley Wildman.
Here in the Foundation, we help families just like yours to shore up permanent income for their retirement years through our charitable gift annuities.
Riley has served as the director of the AFA Foundation for over a decade.
A charitable gift annuity is a gift to American Family Association. Not only are you giving to the Lord's work, but you'll receive a lifetime income and excellent tax benefits.
Contact the AFA Foundation today to learn how you can shore up permanent income for your retirement years while supporting the culture-transforming work of the American Family Association. A charitable gift annuity benefits you and helps ensure the AFA will impact America for generations to come.
Give us a call today at 800-326-4543. That's 800-326-4543, extension 345.
The AFA Foundation, the Financial Stewardship Division of the American Family Association.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
Abraham, there's a crisis around the world. In many parts of Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America, only 1 in 10 Christians has a Bible. What's that mean? It means the majority of believers cannot do what you and I do on a daily basis, and that's open God's Word and be reminded of His precious promises. Like in 1 Peter 5:7, cast your cares on Him, for He cares for you. Hey, here's the reaction of a senior saint in South Africa who finally received her Bible.
She literally knelt down, cried. At the age of 60, she never had a Bible. It is so much fulfilling just to see people rejoicing when they receive their Bibles.
AFR listeners, our goal this month is to put tears of joy on the faces of 4,000 Bibleless believers around the world. We're a little shy of that, so will you give today?
$5 sends a Bible. $100 sends 20. $500 sends 100. You can give by calling 800-YES-WORD. 800-YES-WORD. Or visit sendbiblesnow.org. That's sendbiblesnow.org.
while in the emergency room with my wife as she was struggling with the COVID-19 virus herself. And I looked at her and I said, "Are you scared?" And she said, "A little bit, but I've been through worse."
The Certainty of Mankind's History with Uncertainty, an article by Peter Rosenberger.
And then, as her fever was approaching almost 103, she started singing "In Christ Alone. I place my trust and find my glory in the power of the cross." And that's how she has anchored herself in the certainty of Christ through her huge medical journey that has included 80 surgeries, both of her legs amputated, 100 doctors have treated her, 12 hospitals, and now the COVID-19 virus. And so when we live with those kinds of uncertainties, anchoring ourselves in Christ alone, that's the only place we can run to where there is certainty.
To read this article and more, visit afa.net/The Stand.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. And if you have been following the DeSantis versus Disney saga over the last several years, that has come to a close as of yesterday. Florida's Voice reporting DeSantis defeats Disney in court again, lawsuits to be dropped under settlement. The last-minute far-reaching agreements that gave Disney broad power over their previous self-governing district are declared null and void under the agreement. Christina Pushaw, who is one of the spokespersons for Governor DeSantis, said Disney drops lawsuits, another W for Florida. Of course, the media would rather lie about it or ignore it than admit their hysterical proclamations that they were wrong. Jeremy Redfern, who is the press secretary for Governor DeSantis, tweeted this: "The real story here is the media malpractice surrounding the Disney narrative. They were so sure of themselves." So this is what Governor DeSantis himself had to say on the matter at a press conference yesterday. This is cut 2.
So we've always acted with all the Disney issues, parents' rights and education, replacing Reedy Creek and making sure that was a state control board, doing the, nullifying these covenants at the 11th hour. Everything we've done has been in the best interest of the state of Florida. And we have been vindicated on all those actions. Going forward, we're going to continue to govern with the best interests of the state of Florida. So I'm glad that they were able to do that settlement. Those 11th hour covenants and restrictions were never going to be valid. We knew that. The challenge to the state oversight board to replace Reedy Creek, that's not going anywhere. Obviously, that was dismissed in district court. So we have an interest as a state in moving forward to make this region very strong. This tourism oversight board and that district is a big part of that. And I think that there's going to be ways where we can do things that are in the best interests of the state of Florida. And I think Disney can be a part of that. I mean, certainly you look at Universal, they're doing the Epic Universe. That's going to be a huge, huge game changer for this region. I got to think Disney would have an interest in maybe offering another one. The district will be ready to negotiate something to be able to be good for the state of Florida, be good for jobs, and be good for all those things. But, I would just point out, a year ago, people were trying to act like that all these legal maneuverings were all going to succeed against the state of Florida. And the reality is, here we are a year later, and not one of them has succeeded. Every action that we've taken has been upheld in full, and the state's better off for that.
All right, and you heard Todd and Copper lauding and applauding Governor DeSantis at the very beginning of his remarks there. But let's welcome in our next guest, Ron Coleman, who has been a friend of the show for a while, as our resident legal analyst, I suppose, who is a member of the Dhillon group and also hosts the Coleman Nation podcast. And Ron, I got to say, I mean, I was one that called this, incorrectly from a legal standpoint. I actually thought that Disney's claim of First Amendment retaliation would have more legs than it ultimately did, and the court basically saying because Reedy Creek was basically a government entity that existed by virtue of the legislature, it was wholly under the legislative purview, and regardless of what the Walt Disney Company said, it just really didn't matter. How do you see this in terms of a First Amendment perspective? Did the court get it right in DeSantis versus Disney?
Good morning, Jenna. The court absolutely got it right. There was never a First Amendment issue here. You are correct that when a government takes an action or develops and enforces a policy in a discriminatory way or in a way that where it treats like parties in an unlike manner, then if you can find a free speech related rationale or basis for that behavior, then that's unconstitutional. But there was nothing like the Disney relationship with any other special tax district in Florida. There was no like and unlike that you could possibly compare it to. Even other special tax districts, of which there are many in Florida, none of them were as phenomenally favorable to Disney as as Reedy Creek was. So that was a relationship that needed reform anyway. The fact that Disney stuck a stick in the eye of the state's policy, and remember, it wasn't Ron DeSantis' policy. It might have also been his policy, but it was the official policy of the state of Florida to do X. Doesn't really matter what X is. That doesn't insulate them from what is otherwise the power of the state of the state of Florida to manage the relationships it has with special tax districts. And I had discussed this at great length with a very distinguished Florida lawyer known on YouTube as Andrew Esquire, whose entire practice before living in the Far East as he does now was negotiating issues with the state of Florida on these kinds of special tax districts.
Oh, interesting. And I think that really is where, this turns on. And, and I'm not a Florida lawyer. And so, these special tax districts are unique. And there are, I think it's something like 1,700 in Florida, but certainly none that gave corporations as many privileges and advantages as Reedy Creek did to Disney. And so, this did need modification overall. The context of how this all happened and the flow of and I guess the progression, the timeline was what was concerning to me, because you had Disney come out against the parental rights and education bill. And, they can, as a corporation, they have a right to speak freely. And I disagree with that speech, obviously, but they have a right to do that. And so then that was the only reason that it seemed that the legislature that pushed them to contemplate this tax district. But what you're saying and what the court said and overall is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they decided to do that right then or if they had decided to do it a year before that. This is fully and squarely within the legislative purview to reevaluate the Reedy Creek district, and it seems like moving forward, especially with the Walt Disney Company now having changed their CEO, ousted Bob Chapek, has Bob Iger back. Probably moving forward, we're not going to see as much of that type of of conduct from Disney, because they're now they don't have all of these special privileges, and they don't have a corporate kingdom, is what the DeSantis camp has always said throughout this entire saga. They've said, the corporate kingdom should not exist in the state of Florida. They should be bound by laws like everybody else.
That's right. Although you can be sure that anything attributed to Bob Chapek was actually something that you can more accurately blame on Bob Iger. Iger never left his office, never got out of Chapek's face. He threw Chapek under the bus when he wanted his old job back. And it's not, in my view, because Iger is particularly ideological. It's because he's a selfish pig, and maximizing his control and the wealth from which he takes out of which he takes Disney, control over, and the wealth that he takes out of Disney is his sole policy goal. So they came to this settlement because they got absolutely hammered in the courts. It was going to only get worse. And this is not about a clear-headed decision to do the right thing, but rather it was about the fact that there's a shareholder meeting at which Iger is being very severely challenged by a man named Nelson Peltz in his leadership or sole control over the board of Disney. That's coming up in a week. They wanted this resolved because it's only going to get worse. And for all they knew, a decision was going to come down before that meeting that would have been even worse for Disney than this outcome. Although having read the settlement agreement, I can tell you it's pretty harsh. I mean, there are little telltale signs in the settlement agreement of just how little leverage Disney had in negotiating it.
Wow. And what's incredible about that, and I agree with you that, Disney isn't capitulating their ideology by any stretch. And of course, they have an agenda as a company, and we know that. But what I find really fascinating about this story is how much DeSantis knew about Florida law and the Constitution, and what a brilliant strategist he truly is. And, when we look at how he methodically, with the legislature as well and helping build that supermajority, is kind of methodically going through and making stronger protections for the entire state. I mean, not just related to the Disney company, but, other things like this squatters bill that he signed yesterday that, they're just ending this whole ridiculous notion of squatters' rights. This was excellent because the whole idea of squatters having rights is like saying, that robbers have rights or something. This isn't actual criminal conduct to, come in and steal the enjoyment and use of real property. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I want to play this sound before we get to the end of this segment. This was the Santa Rosa sheriff talking about this, and this was great. Just listen to this.
As to the person, we don't know which homeowner shot at him. I guess they think that they did something wrong, which they did not. If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. So whoever that was, you're not in trouble. Come see us. We have a gun safety class we put on every other Saturday. And if you take that, you'll shoot a lot better, and hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
I love it. We prefer that you shoot, right? I mean, this is like the Second Amendment is alive and well.
Florida has the ability to look at what's going on in blue states before it becomes one, and put into place measures to avoid that ever happening in a way that states that we once thought were blue have not done.
So true. And what's so great is that this is clear-headed with, all the nonsense and the rhetoric. I mean, how much has Governor DeSantis, been called the petty tyrant and all of this stuff by the leftists, and yet everybody in Florida, myself included, as a Florida resident. Well, yeah, actually, very true.
Leftist, Jenna.
Touche, very true.
I don't think I have to tell you.
No, very true. Also, yeah, by that whole crowd. But and yet, Florida just keeps plugging along and becoming, the blueprint for what every red state should be doing. And imagine if we had such clear-headed legislators and governors across the country. I mean, it wouldn't even matter what the federal government is trying to do and how ridiculous they are. I mean, I was reading this headline, Ron, this morning that said that the federal government has spent, what is it? Let me see this. The government report reveals $236 billion worth of improper payments made last year. I mean, what are the feds even doing? It's so ridiculous. And that's both
Nothing.
Parties in Washington.
It's out of control. It's the whole system. The federal government is completely out of control. There's no the idea that there was a continuing resolution. Look at all the things that were. It doesn't matter. Biden writes checks to whoever he wants to. No one stops him. The GAO is toothless. It is a completely, it's a disaster, and really it's a cancer because it's spreading, and it affects every other governing institution and private institution in the country. It's never been worse.
Yeah, it's so true. And now with this new spending bill that I know so many conservatives are still pouring through to actually figure out what was spent, and $1.2 trillion. It's like we don't have that much money, but also we don't need to spend this, and we're spending on so many priorities that aren't actually helping Americans. And yet, Florida actually has a budget that is balanced. I mean, and yet they're doing all of this great stuff for the people of Florida, but they're not using dollars in a way that they shouldn't, and wasting this frivolously. And looking at the bridge that was washed out during the hurricane last year and was rebuilt in like a matter of days. I mean, stuff like that is truly incredible, and what the government should be doing to help and protect citizens' rights and things that our tax dollars actually go to, which is like roadways and common things. I mean, like, I'm happy to contribute to the fire department so that if my alarm goes off like it did last night, the fire department will come, right? And I will not say that I burned my Brussels sprouts, but I'm just saying, it's a good thing that you can call the fire department, and yet we see how completely insane the federal government is. So last just minute or so that I have with you, Ron Coleman, I think Florida, it gives me hope living here that regardless of the federal government, there are still states that are the land of the free, the home of the brave, and, pro-America, and all of the things that, I grew up thinking that the Constitution was all about.
It is, unfortunately, a legitimate battle for the soul of this country in a way that we just never thought was possible. Listen, when I voted for Bill Clinton in 1992, I said, this is a good moment. Here's a guy who's a Democrat, who's a legitimate centrist. And now we can go forward in this country, and both parties seem to, there are problems and there are disagreements, but both parties seem to really want what's best for this country. You just can't say that anymore. I'm assuming even one does.
Yeah.
You certainly can't say both do.
So true. Well, Ron Coleman, thanks so much. And we'll continue to hope and pray that we can get really good conservatives in office. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Wall Builders is dedicated to revealing the truth behind America's founding. Here's Tim Barton, president of Wall Builders.
Our goal here at Wall Builders is to present America's forgotten history and heroes, emphasizing the religious, moral, and constitutional heritage and foundation of our nation. Today, so few people recognize what has made this nation really the most successful, prosperous nation in the history of the world. It's a biblical foundation.
Listen to Wall Builders Live, Sunday mornings at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
This is Frank Gaffney, host of Securing America, a program dedicated to protecting the country we love against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to the glory of God and His kingdom. Each weeknight at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, we provide insights and recommendations about the most important challenges facing our nation from her most thoughtful experts and patriots. Join me to learn how you can help in Securing America right here at 11 p.m. Eastern Time.
Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. In the burning bush encounter, Scripture records that it began as Moses kept Jethro's flock. When the Lord saw that Moses turned aside to see, he called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here I am. Notice God didn't speak to Moses until he gave full attention to what God was trying to show him. Diligent attention to daily duty is necessary. We must be careful, however, not to allow duty to become an idol. Are our hearts still sensitive to God? Can God still get our attention?
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III. public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
If you're 65 or older, you know this. Seeing your healthcare costs go up and up is frustrating. And maybe you were just notified that your Medicare costs are increasing again, or you're just tired of the massive deductibles. Well, here's some good news. There's a program that can really help with this. It's MediShare 65 Plus. It's an affordable, reliable alternative. You can choose any Medicare provider. You get telehealth access anytime you need it. And MediShare 65 Plus is a low-cost option for those with Medicare Parts A and B, and it fills in the gaps where Medicare stops. MediShare is a Christian healthcare community that aligns with your faith. People actually pray for you, they encourage you, and it's proven too. It's been going strong for over 30 years now. So call now. You can get one low monthly price for up to 10 years. You're not stuck with increasing costs. You can do something about this today. Call MediShare 65 Plus. Find out how much you can save. Call 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE. 833-45-BIBLE.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. And, as I do, and as you should, I would commend to your reading. You should read columns by our friend Auron Macintyre because there's a lot of truth in them, and they're just really good and well thought out. And this opinion piece that was published this week is Why the Left Fears Beauty. The key to cultural revolution is to sever the continuity between the past and the present. So Auron Macintyre, who is a Blaze Media contributor, joins us now. So this is a really fascinating topic, and I think from any common sense person, Auron, we can see how the left likes to twist and pervert literally everything, but including, even their notions of what is beautiful. And we know that just like there's a measurable difference between right and wrong, good and evil, we can, as human beings, because the law of God is written on our hearts and we are his creation, we can, beauty is not just solely within the eye of the beholder. It's not just a social construct. It's not just a matter of opinion. There are certain things that are innately beautiful, and the concept of beauty, the form, as Plato might have suggested, versus things that are genuinely ugly or perverted. So expand on this and your thesis here, as Copper is saying hello in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can tell from the way that the left behaves at every level, at the universities and everywhere. They have all these theories about beauty standards and traditional beauty and all, weight, beauty in any size, all these different things about distorting our traditional understandings of not just human beauty, but of course architecture, art. They have to constantly attack art. The climate people are throwing paint on art. Recently, Cambridge University, one of their museums that they fund, went ahead and put some signage out warning people that a landscape painting might evoke dark nationalist feelings. They were worried that people observing a beautiful landscape painting might think about the land that they live in and be proud of it and have a connection to it. And that really underlies the ideological assault that they need to put onto beauty, because the world that they have built is ugly and small and fake. And so when people look at something like a beautiful painting from the past, it connects them to their ancestry, it connects them to their tradition, it connects them to the land, and most importantly, it points them to God and the beauty that he has gone ahead and infused into the world. And that's something that the left finds so scary that they need to put trigger warnings onto museum paintings now to make sure that people understand the dangers that beauty might pose.
Wow. Landscape paintings now are racist is is basically what the left is suggesting. And it is so ridiculous, because if we go back to, what the founders understood with this nation, and when they referred to the laws of nature and of nature's God, we know from a matter of theology that God has given his specific revelation in the Word of God, and he has revealed to us who he is. but the universe around us also reveals who he is. Through our creation, we can come to know our creator. And I love The Privileged Planet is this documentary, and it's also a book for those of you who may not have seen it. And I love how it methodically goes through and talks about how our planet Earth was so intricately, purposely designed to sustain life, and how many things have to be so fine-tuned in our universe that it just absolutely could not have happened by accident. And so our creation points to a creator. And that's exactly what the left, when they want to excise God from reality, they want to manufacture and self-determine their own reality. Beauty as an entire category of not only nature, but also of human creation, because we, like our creator, love to create and design. That points back to the creator that they want to excise from society. And I love, Auron, the photo that's on this article. And again, the title is Why the Left Fears Beauty, and it's at theblaze.com. And it's this, blue-haired, marked up leftist. You can clearly identify this person who's probably, gender neutral, queer, blah, 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 blah. And, just by virtue of the fact that of the blue hair and the way that they look, because they are on purpose trying to mutilate God's design for the body as well.
Yeah, we all recognize this archetype now, right? It's the very first sin, is that I should be like God, that everything needs to be equaled out. Everything needs to be pushed down. We can't have anything above us, greater than us. We can't look to things that are good and true and beautiful. Everything needs to be pushed down equal so that I can be my own master. And so much of the leftist project is tearing down those hierarchies so that they can feel in their low position as if they are equal or even masters of all the things that they have made squalid. And so it's incredibly important to destroy anything that reminds us that natural hierarchies have been placed in the world by our creator for a purpose, to point us to the good and the true, beautiful and the true. And beauty convicts us. Look, each one of us is imperfect. Each one of us could make the world around us a more beautiful place, make ourselves more beautiful, make our art more beautiful, make our architecture more beautiful, make our landscapes more beautiful. Each one of us could be involved in this. And when we look at beauty and we think to ourselves, I have not achieved this yet, it convicts us and it makes us want to do better, be better, have the world around us be improved by our actions so we can make it closer to the thing that God's inspired us to do. But the leftist, of course, does not want this. They want the opposite. They want to make sure that we never see these things, because, again, if we see them, then we might realize that the world around us is nothing like what it should be.
And, as you and I were talking about this article yesterday, it occurred to me in, some of your explanation as well that, the left, like these climate activists who go and try to destroy, these beautiful paintings by throwing tomato soup or whatever on them. And it seems like it's to the casual observer, it's like, okay, what do you possibly promote in terms of your climate activism by destroying these historical art and by creating purposefully destruction. But this is actually cohesive with the entire leftist mentality. They are destroying the past. They'd like to tear down statues, even if, the events were, not the best. I mean, we learned some lessons from the Civil War, and that's a rough point in America's history, but we need to talk frankly and truthfully about our past and where we should go in creating a more perfect union for the future, which was the idea and the worldview of the founders. They didn't suggest that they had it all correct the first time. That's why our rights aren't given by our government. They recognize they come from God, and the sole purpose of government is to preserve and protect those rights. But when we look at the entire scope of the leftist worldview, they are all about tearing down, destroying, and even in the very few things that they build and create. I mean, even if you look at architecture now, I mean, there's this X account, Culture Critic, that I love to follow, because all that this account posts is like, look at the architecture of like in Europe and some of these beautiful monasteries and, some of these beautiful buildings, and then look at the, crazy utilitarian or just frankly ridiculously ugly, purposefully ugly designs of modern architecture. And in terms of art, we can see that we are devolving into chaos by virtue of what we think is art.
Absolutely. One of the things that gives continuity to our existence, which creates our traditions and our culture, is the ability to look back on the great works of beauty that our ancestors have made. That's what binds us together. Like you said, even in rough patches, looking back and seeing the statues of Civil War heroes reminds us that this was a country that was still filled with valorous figures and found a way to heal after a very difficult time. And by destroying that history, they destroy that healing process. They destroy that coming together, that reunification that made us into a great nation again. And that's exactly the point, is to go ahead and cleanse us of this past where we found greatness, and instead to go ahead and create a new one. And like you said, the new future is full of this very bland, utilitarian existence. All of our architecture, all of our public spaces, even the few beautiful statues and things that we have left have to be teared down. And when they're replaced, they're never replaced with another beautiful work. They're always replaced with some kind of horrible, modern, cartoonish, intentionally garish type of statue. And that's not an accident. That's on purpose, because it breaks that idea that we are capable of these great things in the past, because modern America has become a place that isn't capable of those things. And if we saw those beautiful things, we might be convicted and we might feel the duty to return to a virtuous existence where we can once again produce the kind of art that inspires people.
And that's so well said. And I think, kind of in a modern sense, as so many Christians are focused on, just participating in civil government in maybe a hyper partisan view and all of that, we need to not discount the value of the arts. And, one of the things that I loved in my own time, homeschooling, was that, my older brother and I that kind of went through this together. We went through the curriculum of, worldviews of the Western world. And it was taking the philosophy and saying how this came out through works of art, whether, it was painting, it was their drama, it was, all of these things, the architecture, the way that cities were designed, all of these things that weren't just utilitarian. And, when if we go to a typical downtown city, like, for example, I'll pick on Chicago, like, you're almost depressed because it's dark, it's gray, it's devoid of nature and life. And that's no way to reflect our creator. And so for conservatives, I think, Auron, there's real value in engaging in the arts. And, not everybody is going to be a great artist, but even in the ways that we can, make meals together as a family instead of, just going out and getting the fast food. We can keep our spaces clean and beautiful as a reflection of our creator. All of these things that we can do, we should be doing to the glory of God.
Absolutely. The things that we make with our hands, the way that we go ahead and produce things matters. And most people throughout history understood this. With mass consumption and mass production, the ability to just order some cheap version of something off of Amazon from China, we've mostly lost this. We just throw things away rather than taking the time to craft something that is beautiful. Now, every part of modern existence probably can't be master crafted in that way, but we can slow down, like you said, and take time to be careful and thoughtful about the things that we do make, even if we aren't ourselves artists. Not everyone in the past was painting paintings, but every blacksmith, every person who was involving themselves in the creation of something can do it to the glory of God. And so I think it is important, whether we're gardening or we're cooking or we're sewing or whatever we do that allows us to craft something with our hands, we take the time to think about the importance of excellence and beauty.
Yeah, so well said. And one of the things again that my parents instilled in me, and one of the things that they made time and space for was to be creative in some of those ways. And I didn't grow up to become a great artist in a lot of things, but I took piano lessons as a kid to appreciate the design of music. We had a little garden. We did some of the paintings and also studied artwork, from history, and to appreciate the symbolism and these true reflections of God in design. And so often I think in today's modern society, we almost as Christians tend to have a derision for arts and entertainment because it has been taken over by the leftists, but it's because we've abdicated it. And we need to get back into being creators and creating the space first to then be productive. I mean, going all the way back to Creation Week, God showed us that example by creating first the space and then filling it with beautiful designs. I mean, he created the heavens and the earth, and then he filled them. And we need to do the same thing and create space for beauty in our lives and for creation and truly a reflection of God and worship. And this is also something that, work has become just the 9 to 5. I mean, I go on Instagram all the time and everybody complains every Monday as if you're shocked that, Monday's here again. And yet, instead, we need to see value in our work and on purpose take advantage of the opportunities to create beauty in whatever line of work that we're in. And so Auron, we're already out of time here, but I so appreciate you bringing up this topic about why the left hates beauty and contrasting that. And I think the flip side of that as well is we need to, on purpose, as Christians, as conservatives, appreciate beauty and create more of it. So we are out of time for Jenna Ellis in the morning, but we will be back tomorrow on Good Friday talking about the wonderful gift of our Savior and everything that we will celebrate on Easter Sunday. So you can always reach me and my team at jenna@afr.net.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American